And I went back and I walked in and I see an operating theater. I see a steel table under a very bright direct light. The rest of the room is kind of cavernous with a high ceiling and very dark except for under the center. And what's going on are there's several short grays. I could hear them before I approached the room. The sound of metal clanking. They were laying out instruments on a metal tray, metal instruments, like surgical instruments, on a tray, on an arm, just like you see everywhere. Mm-hmm. And I see in the background was a tall gray in the back of the room with his eyes not open, like he was in tune with everything. The room was very dull, but I got that impression that he was focused on everything that was happening at once. But he didn't turn to stare at me. When I walked in, all the other ones did. They stopped talking. They turned to stare at me. And the other one, the tall gray in the shadows, was just kind of like this, like a cigar store Indian, standing proudly, stock still, and with strength. And keep in mind, it was 1968. And they saw me and they go like, okay, well, we've been waiting for you. So come on, let's get going.
Welcome back. I'm here again with Sean and Chris O'Leary. If you haven't watched the previous episode, definitely check it out first because it leads us to where we are now, where Sean, after this 1996 encounter in, it's your backyard, Chris, right, where this happened?
It's our family's home. Our parents are gone now.
Okay. Parents' backyard.
Yes. This house has seen 100 abductions, more. So, yeah.
Where was this house? It was in Hudson Valley, but where, roughly?
We were in a town called Saratoga Springs, which is about 30 miles north of Albany. And
it's officially just north of the Hudson Valley. But
the Hudson River is 3 miles from here. It definitely flows past. But sightings and incidents go as far north as things go. So, but yes, that's where we are, Saratoga Springs.
And so the memories come back. So
yes,
let's start with that.
This day was Revelation Day. If it wasn't for their confluence of mistakes, the way the aliens fucked this up, we wouldn't be sitting here talking with you. We wouldn't be talking
to anybody
about UFOs because they had a lock over our memories, our minds. And it was pretty goddamn strong because from 66 to 96, I've been taken over 100 times. And that day, just like every day, I thought it was the first time I ever saw anything until Sean did not have his memories covered. He was able to remember the immediacy of me getting him and them in a panic.
Yeah, I believe if I had fallen back to sleep for any amount of time, I think the memory would have been gone. You know, it's hard for me to say for certain, but I think the fact that he immediately came pounding on the door to get me up was very important.
And talking about UFOs, which you just got out of.
Yeah, that's true too. Yeah, maybe if he didn't say anything about a UFO, I might not have, I don't know. Not certain. But the way it worked, I certainly did remember it.
And I can't stress enough, this changed our complete lives and our understanding of who we were. Our complete lives, as we knew them, prior to that day, were not our complete lives. Not by a long shot. In the old movie theaters when they had the reels, sometimes you'd watch and be in an old movie house, it would say scene missing. And then, well, good thing we wrapped up that bank robbery.
Yeah, it's like the Epstein video. But anyway,
well, our lives, if they were a movie, They were a science fiction horror movie with all the scenes of science fiction and horror cut out and on the cutting room floor. Well, because of their mistakes, we got those scenes back in our reel, and we became aware of how much of our lives was spent in service to telepathic monsters and metal ships who land in your yard or hover over your house, and we are angry. And that's why we are here. I'm looking for, people like you, trauma. It's amazing you can talk about this. No, I couldn't imagine talking about anything else because I want revenge.
To advertise on Through a Glass Darkly, email throughaglassdarkly@gmail.com.
I want the payback like Jason Statham in any movie he's ever been in.
Mel Gibson.
Well, not Mel Gibson for obvious reasons, but he was in a movie called Payback, right? So that's what we want. That's what I want. I don't want.
Chris is angrier than I am. I've just kind of accepted the fact I'd prefer to have never been abducted. Clearly, I'd rather life would be so easy without it, in my opinion. But, it is what it is. I can't change it. There's certainly no revenge on them. There's nothing we're going to be able to do other than talk about it.
Yeah, it's not like we're going to. There's like a 2 meter wide hole in the Death Star that leads straight to the thermal core that we can, like shooting at womp rats, just get it down there. But we can screw up their game by making enough noise. That's all we can do. I mean, it's not much, but they've acted in secrecy since the moment they've gotten here, since the moment they arrived.
And I think that's why there's hope, because they're clearly vulnerable. If they weren't vulnerable, they wouldn't be operating under complete secrecy, right?
I guess. Well, first of all, I'm convinced what they're doing here is they're taking over this planet. Simple as that. They're an invasive species. They come from someplace else, and they're very much like an anthill or a beehive, They have this group mind, and they're goal-oriented. You never saw ants sitting around, discussing or watching entertainment or something. They don't know how. And they're here because all successful life forms require two things: expansion of territory and access to resources. And that's what they're here for. And we are the number one resource on their list right now. And that's with the abductions. People assume that sometimes that they abduct us because they're interested, or they're just, trying to figure out how we work, What does this gland do? They know better than I do how we work. The main reason of the abductions is hybridization, so they can create aliens that can live here undetected and still retain all the abilities of the more pure aliens. They're moving in, they're replacing us, and we're either going to be extinct or enslaved. They have told me, the tall grays, I hate to cut to the...
No, this is good. This is good.
They have told me, and proudly, they don't really give you details about what they're doing, but he said this proudly, like it wasn't a secret. And several grays, tall grays, have told me this, and almost verbatim, he said, soon we will all live here together, and everyone will know his place. Well, I don't even like the first half of that sentence. But where do you think our place is going to be? Exactly where it is right now. You're mind controlled, in service to whatever they want to have you do, without the thoughts and personality and wants and desires and fears that make us who we are. They strip all that down from you. When you're in their custody, they remove your free will and your genuine reactions and attitudes. A lot of people say the aliens are here to give us higher consciousness. And it's the exact opposite. They're here to lower your consciousness. So they're able to make you do whatever they want you to do. That's my take on it. And isn't anybody a little concerned that they've been here for 75 years and never said a word to anybody about why they're here, about what they're doing? There was never a press release. Don't worry about us. We're from the Gallifrey or Federal region. And we're just kind of like sightseeing. And, wow, we took a couple people. So we just, figured out things about how you work. Don't worry about us. They've never said a word to us. They operate in secrecy. And usually in life, if somebody's doing things in secret, it's because if the person they're doing them to found out, they would want it to stop. The people who say love and light, the aliens are about love and light. Oh, there's love and there's light and the CE5, we're out in the desert, the entities come down and if they're about love and light, how come for the last century they steal your children in the dark? Reconcile that for me. Right?
Yeah, I think there a large segment of the UFO community, if you want to call it that, ignore abductions because it does sound like bad news. And it's somebody's story, it's anecdotal evidence. I equate it to the police only being interested in the traffic cams catching the getaway cars and having absolutely no interest in talking to the victim or witnesses of the actual crime itself. It's like, oh, no. We're chasing the getaway car over here. We don't even believe anything. And we don't even want to hear what that getaway car was getting away from.
They ignore the criminals, and all of ufology is focused on the getaway car. That's about it. Half the people who are interested in ufology, they don't even go near the alien subject. They look at the craft, look at the way it behaves. Did you see the boogosphere? It's amazing. But look at this shaped craft that appeared over Tulsa, thanks to Photoshop. That's where their interest ends.
Even Lou Elizondo said he's not interested in what's inside. He's interested in the craft. So I think it's more or less he doesn't want to talk about what's inside. But
I don't even think it's him. I think it's the government that doesn't want you.
Sure. Yes, I mean he's not alone in that. But
and the very fact that it's still called ufology is evidence of how far behind this conversation is, every aspect of it. Because ufology, fine, 47, 48, yeah, that's what we're seeing on it. But by 1961, it should have been alienology, because that's what matters. It's not the ships. Sure, they're cool. We get it. Cool ships that we want to have for ourselves. But the people inside are the issue. They're the problem. They're the presence. They're the invaders. They're the incursion. They're the unwanted guests who act however they want. And there's so many alien apologists, right, Sean?
Sure.
Yeah, there are people, and so half the ufology is not interested in the aliens, and another half of what's left is not, or believe the aliens are, they're here to give you free energy, right? They're here to advance your consciousness, so you're your benevolent space uncles, and invite us to join the Galactic Federation of Do-Gooders and the Justice League of Outer Space and the Federation. And so it's just a very tiny fraction. We're speaking the truth about alien contact. And we've gotten blamed from people who believe that aliens are here. And gray aliens are here. They'll say things like, well, your vibrational level is just low and polluted. And that's why you attract the bad ones. It's your fault. If you were more elevated or a quote unquote better person, you wouldn't have these problems. And some people who are very prominent in ufology, at least on Twitter, which I don't know where else ufology even takes place, they've said things like, Very learned people who should know better than to say this told me, well, you're just making it bad. When you take a dog to the veterinarian, he thinks it's a bad experience, but it's for his own good and it needed to be done. And that was his rationale for a lifetime of abductions involving a lot of horrific things. Well, first of all, I won't say the name. I won't say his name. I'm not a dog. Okay? And I'll decide what's for my own good. Thank you. And I don't need to go to a veterinarian. And I don't even need a doctor. What I need is to be left the fuck alone by monsters. So
was that your last abduction that you remember in 1996?
Not mine, no. I've had, plenty since. The most recent one that I remember, they're so good at what they do. There's a reason why I didn't remember them for all those years. They can come, take you, bring you back, and you're none the wiser. But the last time I remember it happening was November of 23. And before that, the one I remember before that was November of 22, Thanksgiving weekend. And we also had, I think it was July of, was it 23, 24, where an orb came through my house.
Yeah. It's funny, with all the face-to-face contact we've had on all the ships, something like an orb coming into your home and floating in front of you and going through every room, it just slips our mind. My mind is...
Well, there's so many things, so there's no way to cover
unimportant.
Yeah.
But yeah, it certainly did. It was Father's Day of 23, and this green light comes on outside the window of the driveway, and a green ball, greenish yellow, chartreuse colored ball pushes its way through the screen. It didn't just like light goes through. It kind of blobbed its way through. Sean was in the other room, and I thought Sean was pranking me, right? But it was increasingly by the second that this is not a prank. And we're watching the Grateful Dead on his wall projector, kicking back on Father's Day. And I was eating a plate of pasta, and I'm frozen with a fork full of ziti when this thing comes through. And it's bobbing in front of me and between me and the screen, past me into the kitchen. And then I'm leaning. It turns the corner and then goes into the sunroom and comes back through the kitchen again and goes shooting past my shoulder through an interior wall, which would have taken it to where Sean was. Sean came out a minute later, and I had the pasta. And I said, "Was that you?" Was what me? It was not him, and he didn't see it.
I didn't see it, but it went through the wall that, if you on the other side is where I was, but I never noticed it, never saw it.
And that's the least, that's the least of ours, but it was pretty recent. And as for me, I don't remember being taken since I moved away. Like when our memory drops in 96 into our heads, there was nothing past the point where I moved to Albany around 89, maybe 90. I had moved to an apartment where I was 100 feet from the governor's mansion, Governor Cuomo. I think the first one, Mario Cuomo. So I was that close, and there's a constant security presence, and it's right next to the Capitol, and it's a protected corridor. Maybe I wasn't worth it. I wasn't worth that level of exposure. Plus, it was Sean. He was the one they really wanted. I disappointed them more than once. Yeah, I was not so much on board, but, no pun, with what they wanted to join.
Why do you both think they continued with Sean? Is it just because he didn't move, or just more cooperative, or some aspect of it? I was
pretty cooperative with them. That could have been it. I honestly think the reason why if they did like me, I think the reason they did was because, and don't get me wrong, there were times where I was petrified. I was in terror. But I got used to them coming, and it not only was normal, but it was somewhat exciting to me. So I would greet them, and there'd be small talk. And for me, the worst part was being paralyzed by them. So I told them that, and I asked them not to paralyze me anymore. I used the word, I was a child, so I said, freeze me, don't freeze me anymore. And they said, as long as you do what you're told, we won't. And they didn't from that point forward. And they would just come in and they'd wake me up. They'd maybe answer a couple of questions I would have. You know, there were times I'd see them go into my parents' room and do things and take my mother out and fly her through the window. I'll give you a specific one.
Yeah.
They'd woken me up, time to go. So we walked out my bedroom door, and we're standing in the doorway of my parents' bedroom. One of the tall grays walked over to my father, who was sleeping, went over, touched him on the side of his head with his finger, and started walking back towards us. I said, what if he wakes up? And he answered me. He said, he won't. And he said it with such a confidence that I've never heard anybody say anything as confidently as he did. I don't know if it's necessarily the voice, or I'm also picking up a feeling on him. He couldn't have been more confident that my father wasn't going to wake up. Oh, I asked him first. I said, is he coming with us? And he said, no, not this time. What if he wakes up? And he said, he won't. And after he said that, he was talking to the other one. He says, who is this kid to question me? You know, a little annoyed and maybe a little impressed. I don't know. And then he walked around and touched my mother on her head, and she got up right out of bed as if she was in a trance and walked towards the window in that bedroom. And she was wearing her nightgown, and there was a light coming through the window. And she got to the window, and she did a somersault midair really fast and shot out the window quickly. And then we followed behind them.
And to further, Sean, tell them the difference between his abductions and mine. They, like Sean, he had characteristics and abilities that they were extremely happy about, right? I mean, and things they didn't do with me.
Yeah.
Say more about that.
They would test me and things like that, mental abilities. There was a time I was there there was another person there I won't name. But when they do these things, they don't explain to you what they want you to do. It's just, there you are, do it. And they had these sticks. And at the end of each stick, when I was a kid, I thought it was fire, and it may have been. But it also may have been just some like electrically charged thing that was lit up and was similar to a fire. And they were spinning around in the air. And the other child that was over there was keeping his spinning. I don't know if he was doing it or if they were controlling it. But the one in front of me came over and hit me in the side of the head, you know, because I had no idea what to do or how to do it. And I don't know if they wanted us to control it with our minds. And I don't know how I knew they wanted that, but they did. And so I asked the other child over there, I said, how do you do it? And there was a tall alien standing behind me, and he just touched me on the top of the head right here. And I felt an electric charge go in a very narrow tube-like shape, go straight down to the center of my brain, and gave it like a jump start. And I could feel that part of my brain for the first time. It felt like it had been dormant. And I could literally feel a small, probably golf ball size and round part of my head, or brain right in the middle. And all of a sudden I could move this thing with my mind, and I could do it easily. And I spun it around. I lifted it up higher and spun it like a helicopter. It was more like a wheel going the one direction. I spun it like a helicopter, and I spun it around the room a couple of times. And they stopped it in midair, and the one behind me, slightly excited, says, I've never seen anything like it. This is what we've been doing this for the whole time. And the other one turns towards that one and says, because there were two of them, one behind each kid. And the one behind the other kid turns and says, I know, as if he agrees with them, but he's also telling them to calm down. And that's all I remember of that time.
So, Chris, this is what we were talking about with the human potential stuff, right? They don't want this stuff coming out, they being the government.
Could be.
Yes, I have no frame of reference. I never was involved in anything like that. I had a more of a passive resistance path with them, but they never tested me like that. And there was another incident they tested him where Sean came through with flying colors. So he was the one, I think, once he showed his potential. For me, I was taken all the time. And then when he came along and started showing these abilities, they shifted their focus. They would still take me for reproduction. I mean, they introduced me to my hybrid child, and same thing happened for Sean, but he's the one, The aliens always liked him better, to reference the Smothers Brothers. But
yeah, I do remember being taken with other family members, but a lot of times I think I was taken alone for a vast majority of it.
Me too. I mean,
yeah,
they would take Mom and me for years. And I remember the first time it was 1968. And I know that just by where we were living. They took me the first time alone. And it was pretty much that way. There were a couple of times, and just a couple, where they took everybody. And they would take two of us here, or me and Mom, or him and Mom and Dad, or whatever. Dad was the least taken. They left him sleeping quite a bit. The same thing happened with me. I'm like, if you take me and Mom and Dad wakes up, he's going to call the police. And he won't.
Of what descent was your mother? I mean, father's obviously Irish, given O'Leary. But
yeah, my father is 100% Irish, and I realized there's a level of connection with abductions and that, and as well as Rh negative blood. And my mom is the one, and she is 50-50 Irish and Italian, but she is the one. I mean, it's hard to say much about her father. We don't know if this started with her. He didn't really come home from the war in the Pacific. So,
was her father the Irish side or the Italian side?
He was the Irish side.
Okay.
And it started, what we know, at least in our family, it was Mom. It was Mom first. And we don't know because she told us or anything like that. But when we were kids, right? And we'd be at her parents' house, who lived a block away. This is a tight neighborhood.
Mother and stepfather.
Yeah, her mother and stepfather. We were being abducted. We didn't know it, really. Sometimes we did, but mostly no. But whenever there was a report on the television of a UFO, whenever it happened throughout the 70s or the 80s, my grandparents would say, oh, UFO, huh? Wow, see, that's just like what happened to Rose. See, same thing. Yeah. And they would go on to tell us, your mother went missing. And when she came back, she said she was taken in a triangle spaceship above her head. Huh, isn't that wild? How about that, Rose? And they didn't really take it seriously. But, over the years, we pressed my mom for details, and she was 12. She was walking their poodle in a block away from their house, bright sunny afternoon. And all of a sudden, the bright sun was kind of blotted out. And she could see a shadow on the ground that was the shape of a triangle. Covered the road, and it covered parts of the lawns on each side of this road. She looked up, and she said, it was a triangle over my head. And it was so low. And I looked at it, and I couldn't understand where it came from or how it was in the air, because there was no engine, there were no propellers, there was no wake, no air. It was just hovering over her head. She said maybe 20 feet. And we pressed her for details. Was it one smooth piece? Was there different pieces? She said, no, there were segments to it. It was clearly put together. There were at each corner, there were little recessed circles that she thought could be lights. And in the center of the underside of the craft was she said it was like a hatch that was open. And I was staring into it, and it was so black. And that's it. The next thing she remembered, it was 4 hours later. It was dark. And my grandparents had gotten worried. It's a safe neighborhood. There was no trouble. She's got lots of friends in the neighborhood, but she never goes off on her own. She was a good girl. So they called her friends after a while, and nobody had seen her. They were really getting concerned, and the dog came home on its own. And at that point, they put the coats on, and they're going to find her, or they're going to the police station. And just as they are getting in their car, she comes in a daze, walking up, dark street, shaken to them. They're like, where have you been? And she told them I was walking jet, and there was this triangle, and I don't remember anything. It was right over my head, and I don't know what happened. So it was meant as like a goofy anecdote by our grandparents, something like that. Oh, can you believe that?
Yeah.
Rosie said she saw the same thing, but it was not. It was not from my mother. It was a very serious thing, and it ties in with everything that's happened to us. Now, that was before we were born. It was 1959. Mm-hmm. That was 2 years before Betty and Barney Hill, for God's sakes, who were about 80 or 90 miles from us when they were taken in New Hampshire. So these things have been through our lives forever.
When was the first abduction that you remember about yourself, Chris?
It was 1966. And I really don't talk often of the earliest memories because I was a very young child at that point. I was a toddler. But yeah, they showed up. My mom had me very young. My dad was very young. And it was, pre-Roe v. Wade. So if you got pregnant, you had the child. And they were teenagers doing what teenagers do. And so when my mom had me, she had to drop out of school and hide, like somebody shunned. And so after I was born, her aunt, who lives right near us, took me in for the first 3 years. And Mom always visited every day after she got out of, 10th grade, 11th grade. She wanted to finish school, so my aunt gave her the chance. My dad, who was a couple years older, wanted to get a little bit of college, a couple of years before he has to start being the family man and breadwinner and buying a home. So the first one was with my aunt. And, I've really never told this one, but I was in a crib. I was 3.5 years old, so I wasn't a baby. They didn't have a real bed for me, crashing at my aunt's house. And I remember one night I'm awake. I wake up and I hear voices outside the wall. And my aunt is arguing with a couple of people who she apparently let in. And they were tall grays. I'm like, we need to see the boy. And she's like, you can't come in. And no, don't worry. We mean no harm. We don't mean any harm. We're just going to take a look. And you can't open the door. You're going to wake him up. And I hear telepathically in my mind, one says, he's already awake. He's sitting there listening to us. So tell you what, you open the door. So my aunt's like, it's a compromise. She opens the door. There he is. And I'm sitting there looking at them. I don't know what they are. And they say, we just have to pick him up. We have to lift him up and hold him. And she's like, no way. You cannot. And they were amused by her. The Greys have a wider range of emotions than a lot of people want to paint them as. They were like, woman, you are a strong defender of this boy, and that is very good. but we need to pick him up. Tell you what, why don't you go pick him up and let us hold him for a minute? She does. They're controlling her mind. And that was it. They're there holding me. And then it continued to get stranger, especially when they started taking me alone. I mean, anyone's memories at that early age are spotty at best, so I really don't like to start there. I start when they started taking me alone in 1968, before Bobby Kennedy was killed. Because my dad was a volunteer for Senator Kennedy. He had run for a senator of New York in 66. My dad had volunteered, campaigned for him. So when the Kennedys were killed, it had a big impact on my parents' lives. So that's how I can place it. We were in that apartment. And it increased, it kept going.
Well, did they pick you up? Like, what did they do with you once they held you?
That first time, that's all I have. That is all I have. And I'm also less reluctant to speak about incomplete incidents, and especially not ones that early, but I'm telling it here. I just told it. And then after that, they came for me. I was sitting in 1968. It was May 68, because I was just months away from kindergarten. I was just about 5. I was going to be 5 in a couple of weeks. I had my room upstairs. My parents bought me a little TV so that they could be left alone while they're making my other brothers. You know what I mean? Put him in his room, give him a little TV. I was sitting there, and all of a sudden a red light comes through the window at a 45-degree angle. But it wasn't really like any light I'd ever known. It was thick, like gel. It's like laser lights today, that super powerful, intense beam of light. And I sat there. I didn't want to move. I was scared. And I'm like, whatever this is, I hope it stops. And eventually it did. And I moved to my bed, and I leaned to look out the window and up. And I could see a disc. I could only see the edge of it. Like, it was right over our building. And I could see an edge that was protruding, turning, with like lights on it. Like, kind of like if you're underneath a record album and you can see, the edge of it. And as I sat, it moved off. It went away. And even at the age I was like, that's good. It doesn't have anything to do with me. It moved away. Well, like a lot of abductees will tell you, they move away. They're probably circling back. They're either doing a perimeter, or maybe they overshot you. So it came back, and it turned sideways. It was a disc, and it was brightly lit with ribs of colored lights and lights around the edge. And it did it so that it could fit in between our house and the next house. It was a narrow driveway. And it did. It turned like a wheel, and it's turning. And all of a sudden, I look down, and there are 2 almost bluish under the moon, white beings. And they had just dropped there. And here's my thought. I hope this doesn't have anything to do with me. And the instant I said that, they both turned and looked right at me. And I'm like, I think it does. And what I did was I retreated to a corner so I couldn't see out the window. One of them came to the window, tap, 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 tapping its fingers. So I take a look, and there he is at my window. I'm on the 2nd floor. All right. But there he is, tapping at the window.
Is this a tall gray or a short gray?
They were all tall to me at that point.
Yeah, fair enough.
I think they were regarded as short grays, but a tall gray had to come in and get me. Yeah, they're tapping, and then they gesture. He gestures to his friend on the ground. The friend gestures up at the ship. Like, you come out, and we're going up there. But I didn't hear the words, at that point. I think they go easier on you when you're a little child with the mind control. I could be wrong, but I wouldn't come out. And I just sat in the corner. A minute later, I hear the back door open. Something's coming up the stairs, and floating in the darkened corridor were my baby brothers in a crib, and my parents are sleeping. And it's a tall gray. and we had enormous ceilings, and it was floating a little bit off the ground. Not much, maybe 6 inches, and its long cloak was trailing on the ground. You could hear it rustling. And when he came to the door to my bedroom, he had to go down a little bit because the ceilings are high, but he had ducked through the doorway and came in. And I sat there. I didn't know what to do. And it kind of made a 360-degree turn as I watched him. And then he had me get up and walk with him. And we reached the top of the stairs, which were very steep. We were in a building that was owned by a rich family. So the service stairs for the staff, laundry, housekeeping, butlers, were very narrow and steep. And the tall alien took my hand. And I said, I can go down these. I go down these stairs. He says, no. When you're with us, if you are injured, it is our fault, our responsibility. So I'm going to help you. Went down the stairs. We had to go over the backyard fence. I told them I climbed this. He says, no. And they levitated me over the fence. And next thing I know, we whoosh up into this craft. And there we were. It was disorienting. And the tall gray went about whatever he was doing. The two short grays they said, okay, we were at a point in a hallway that goes around the perimeter. And where we were standing, where we came up, we could see into the control room, which is brightly lit. A lot of their ships are dark. I get the feeling they don't like really bright lighting. But anyway, the two shorts said to me, okay, you go down there. And they gestured down the hallway. And I'm like, really? Yeah, come on, you know the way. You know the way. Just down there. So I start down the hallway, and they're standing where they were, and I get closer, and I hear voices, a lot of voices, and I see an open doorway, and I don't go as far as the doorway. I didn't like whatever was going on in there. And so I turned and I walked back, feigning ignorance, And I come back, and the two short grays they're engaged in small talk. They're like, I'll tell you another thing is, when are we going to get, they're just talking shop. And they see me and they go, what are you doing back here? Just go. It's going just around the corner. You've been there before. You know it. Just go. I didn't know it, but I believed him. And I went back and I walked in, and I see an operating theater. I see a steel table under a very bright direct light. The rest of the room is kind of cavernous, with a high ceiling and very dark, except for under the center. And what's going on are there's several short grays. I could hear them before I approached the room, the sound of metal clanking. They were laying out instruments on a metal tray, metal instruments, like surgical instruments, on a tray, on an arm, just like you see everywhere.
Mm-hmm.
And I see in the background was a tall gray in the back of the room with his eyes not open, like he was in tune with everything. The room was very dull, but I got that impression that he was focused on everything that was happening at once. But he didn't turn to stare at me. When I walked in, all the other ones did. They stopped talking. They turned to stare at me. And the other one, the tall gray in the shadows, was just kind of like this, like a cigar store Indian, standing proudly, stock still, and with strength. And keep in mind, it was 1968. And they saw me and they go like, okay, well, we've been waiting for you. So come on, let's get going. They're very much about their schedules. I will say that. And he asked me if I could get up on the table by myself. I'm like, yeah, sure can. Just watch. Okay. And then I'm on the table, and, that's when they really put you under. They completely anesthetize you. I will go so far as to say this: at the beginnings and ends of abductions, the heads and tails, they like you to be ambulatory. They like you to be able to walk onto the ship. to walk to the part of the ship they want you to. They don't want to drag you or carry you or float you. So you're not as sedated. And that's why the strongest parts of the memories are before they perform whatever the procedures are. It's the coming and going. And
I agree with that. Yeah, that's most of my memories are either coming or going. Most of them are them coming to get me, I would say. And then, handful of returns, probably more than a handful, and then snippets on the craft itself.
Do you remember any of the procedures?
The only thing I remember is this took place in my bedroom. Two things happened, and it may have been the same incident. It probably was. They were in my room, and one of them was doing the work, and the other one was directing it. And they were putting an implant up my nose, up my right nostril. And the thing that may have been the same time, it may have been a different incident, but I think it was the same incident, was they took a scoop of my skin off my face as well, what's known as a scoop mark. The one who was doing it wanted to know where to take it from, and the tall gray said his face. And I panicked. I was paralyzed at this point. And I said, no, not my face. And the one who was doing it actually stopped what he was doing and turned around to look at the one giving the orders, to question, well, do you still want to, you didn't say anything, but kind of, do you want to reconsider now that the kid is panicking? And he just said, his face. And so they took a scoop out of my face, and then some people theorize that they use that skin to wrap or I've heard it before.
Yeah, it makes sense.
The implant. And I don't know for sure that that's what they did, but they shoved the implant far up my right nostril, and it caused a bloody nose. And I was going to wake my mother up after this to help me with my bloody nose. And I could hear a voice this is after they left. I could hear a voice in my head say, you can do it. So that's what I did. I went in the bathroom and just stopped the bloody nose.
Yeah. Did you both have lots of bloody noses as kids?
Well, Sean mentions that, and the same thing, very similar, happened to me. Before he was born, 68, 69, we were still in that house. He's right. If they can do something in your room, in your house where you are, they'll do it. They take you if they need to do other things, but there have been many times I don't know if it's just for a checkup or something routine, but what happened was I came to consciousness, and I was sitting in my chair in my bedroom, and there were three of them, and they were putting something horribly painful in my nose, and it was outrageously painful. And the only times I've ever woken up under their sedation during a procedure have been two times when it was so incredibly painful that my body forced me to wake up. And what happens then, there they are working this thing up my nose, and he's up. One of them comes over and gets really in your face. For some reason, being in your face and eye to eye, it kind of gives them more ability to control you. Not as a rule or anything, but that's what's happened to me. They get closer and focus on you, and they put me in a zone. I didn't go unconscious, but this stupor where I wasn't feeling the pain, and they finish up. And they're walking out of my room, at the same room where they came and got me the first time there. Mm-hmm. And one of them, the third one in line, turns around and says, as an afterthought, don't try to get that out of there, because you could kill yourself. Okay? All right. And was gone. They give way too much. Oh, yeah. Yeah, sure. Tell a 5-year-old not to put his finger in his nose. Sometimes these brilliant beings are quite stupid as to what they expect children to be capable of.
Yeah, they sound more human-like than I've previously heard.
I've come away with is they talk like humans, and they act a lot like humans. They have emotions like we do. If you had your eyes closed and you heard them speaking, you would just assume it's a person.
This is a point where we receive a lot of angry disbelief, okay? Because everybody knows aliens talk like, "Be still, human, the procedure shall begin, and we shall return you in a living condition, you carbon life form." Right? That's how aliens talk, right? And the short ones, they're just robots.
They're robots. Stephen Greer seen the factory.
Yeah, Stephen Greer saw the factory where they build the robots. Oh, there was just a pile of bodies for them to use at any time. Stephen Greer is one of the worst things that's ever happened to ufology. He's lying through his teeth. He's the biggest alien apologist I've ever heard, and he's full of shit. He tells people they're not abducted by aliens. Oh, it's my lab.
My labs, yeah.
Yeah, it's my labs.
Yeah, if anybody who has any knowledge how the U.S. military works, there is no possible way you would be able to have an operation that extensive, that far-ranging, for that long.
And would the military use that technology to go abduct 4 and 5 and 8-year-olds repeatedly?
Yes. The whole lab falls apart.
Why? Yeah, why?
One, they have these ships that defy physics and gravity, right? Somehow we have them. Oh, we invented them Lockheed Martin invented it in 47. Really? Then why did we go on to develop jet airplanes?
Why are we losing the Russia-Ukraine war? I have said
this for years. Yeah. If we had those, here's the situation. We have those ships, right? We're using them for abductions. Like the generals in charge of Vietnam didn't say, "Listen, we get it. You've got this top secret tech. We are about to lose the first war that America has ever lost. For the love of Christ, just loan us 2 flying saucers for like a week. We will take out the Khmer Rouge and Pol Pot in Cambodia, the Viet Cong, the Ho Chi Minh Trail will be destroyed." Just a weekend.
Do you think MacArthur would have said, "Nah, I got this. We'll just drop, do an amphibious invasion at Incheon to stop the 250,000 Chinese soldiers from overrunning Korea"? Are you kidding me, MacArthur?
Right.
Insubordinate MacArthur? Yeah.
He wanted to nuke the Yellow River.
Yes, he did.
Yeah, that's why he got fired. But, okay, so the general comes and asks the flying saucer general, just a weekend, for the love of God. And the general says, "No can do. I know we went through ROTC together, Paul, and we go way back, and I respect you. But I cannot loan you these because we are using them. We have plans." Well, what are you doing that's more important than winning this costly war? "We've got toddlers to abduct." What? You got travelers to toddlers, 3, 4, 5. We got to go abduct them. That's what we do. And very busy cities and crowded suburbs, that's what we do with them. Well, what do you do with the toddlers? Don't really know, but it's probably something. And we do things. And
we put implants up their noses.
Yeah.
And why do you put implants up their noses?
Yeah.
And excuse me, what is the hybridization program about? Are you trying to crossbreed an enlisted man with the officer class? Is that that's what your hybridization is? Let me get this all straight. They're wearing costumes that look like gray aliens, but they're using mind control
to make you forget it in the first place.
Yeah.
And why wear the
they would say it's all an outgrowth of MK Ultra. It's just the plans after.
Yeah.
Right.
It's all an outgrowth of pure bullshit, number 1. Number 2, actually. These beings have mind control. First of all, they can read your thoughts as quick as you can think them. And if you're thinking of fleeing or resisting, they paralyze you where you stand. They read you like a book, and they're telepathic. You hear them in your head. You hear them. You hear them in your head, and they hear you.
Do you think that's how they communicate? You're telling me
also.
Yeah, we also have that capability.
Yeah, yes, right.
So why?
If the government had mind control, we would all have voted for Trump. That's what would have happened. We would be under complete control if the government had these abilities. How about levitation? Do MK Ultra's got those? They have a little device. And what do they do with their mind control device? Is it like a box, like a guitar effects pedal, where they can just set it? Let's set it for gray aliens, and then we'll cover their memories. We have the ability to cover humans' mememories.
Well, there is. I'll just tell you an apocryphal story really quickly. Are you familiar with who Pat Price is?
No. Nope.
They ran an experiment. The CIA ran an experiment using Pat Price. Pat Price was a remote viewer. Actually, I don't even think it was CIA. It might have been like Scientology. Scientologists ran an experiment with Pat Price. And what they asked him to do was try to influence the population of this particular town in Canada to, I don't know if it was Canada or some town in North America, to influence the population to do a specific task on a specific range of dates. So they focused on some town and they had them register to vote at a very specific post office. And the result was statistically beyond significant that these people went and registered between these dates at this very specific post office. So I don't know if the government has weaponized that or knows how to do it, but there have been experiments that call it suggestion, that again, correlation does not imply causation. But
I get it. Yeah. And it seems like
anyway, I'm not trying to defend my labs. I'm just
gotcha. Yeah. Well, the fact is, it's not my labs. They don't have the ships. They don't have mind control. They don't have levitation. They don't have the ability to take you through solid objects. They don't have bigger ships up there to take you to, which is where they take you. They don't have any of these things. They can't read your mind. They can't control your mind instantly in that minute. They can't. Humans don't have that ability. This sounds like a worthwhile experiment, and some people have more abilities than others. But these things walk into your house, and in 5 seconds, and they uncover your memories every time. So the government has the ability to successfully wall off all your memories, take over your body, to paralyze it neurologically, to reach into your mind and completely change you from someone who's trying to scream and fight to a willful, sedate, complacent participant. They don't have it. It's not my labs. We're being taken by gray aliens. They're an invasive species from someplace else. They have abilities we don't. And all this talk of my labs or them being us from the future, these are people trying to fit humans into this equation as the main character. It's main character syndrome. We don't want to admit that it's much easier for people to be angry at the government than it is for them to be angry at aliens. That's the shocking thing of all this. There are people I know in this field, in ufology, they're more angry that the government has kept the alien secret than they are at the aliens who are invading our planet and committing felonies and with every abduction, right up to rape and forced reproduction.
I'm with them on that because there's a reason Dante's ninth circle of hell is filled with traitors, because they're the absolute. So if our government's lying to us about it, I agree with that. Like, put them into that category. Like, that's, if you don't give me the ability to fight back, like, you are the bigger enemy.
I
right?
think
if you're lying to me, yep.
You've got two people here who disagree with you.
And that's
I hope
all
you
right.
hear us out. Yeah.
I just think,
of course, respectfully,
I
absolutely,
think you're doing the greater good. I think it would create an incredible panic if the average mom out there who doesn't pay attention to UFOs at all finds out that, these creatures are coming in and taking children in the middle of the night. There's got to be a repercussion for that. People are not going to be happy to hear that.
This society almost fell apart from COVID, okay? I'm of the mind that their refusal to disclose this in 1953 or whatever was absolutely the right move and the responsible move of elected officials or
back then, of
authority
course,
figures.
In the context of the Cold War, yes.
I'll go so
after
far
the Cold War ended,
Today, that's still the right thing to do. To not come out and say this to
like
people.
We talked about, the top people, some of the biggest names in ufology today don't even believe abductions are happening, or they're not paying attention to it. So if those people who are known throughout the country, at least, would have a hard time accepting it, what's the average person? But a lot of people would think they were lying. The government's covering up something else.
They do now.
I don't think the government's capable of doing it anymore.
I know, but that's what a lot.
I don't believe anything they say. Right? Like, they lied about COVID. They called you a racist if you're like, there's a place in Wuhan called the Wuhan Institute of, virology, with novel coronavirus research. Yeah. It's a lab leak. No, you're racist. Like, are you trying to tell me that you're portraying the Chinese as barbarians, like pounding penguins in a wet market and eating like dirty meat? That's
better. Yeah,
I'm with you. I mean,
but here's the thing: like, this pervasive lie is so corrosive that look, I'm not going to get into it, but like Epstein, like that whole Epstein thing. Like, even if they're telling the truth, the narrative that's winning out right now is that our entire country is controlled by psychopathic elites who are compromised in a PDF files ring, right? Mm-hmm. Controlled by a foreign government, right? That we've been operating on behalf of for the last 30 years. That's the narrative that's winning right now, because of pervasive government lies. So
let's just get back to disclosure. I have a couple of points I'd like to make.
By the way, we are disclosure right now, because it ain't ever going to come from the government.
We are disclosure. So, yeah. And the government is not stopping anybody from figuring out what's going on and talking to people who know. You can listen to us, or you can dismiss us.
If the Good Trouble Show incident is any indicator,
it doesn't mean the government wants to have a hand in it. It's the wrong move.
Fair.
If the president came out on television, whether it's 1953 or yesterday or tonight, and said, "Good news, folks, we got a breaking story. Turns out aliens completely real. Who'd have thunk it? Huh? Tall fellas. There's a tall one." He comes up to me and he goes, "They're 7 feet tall." He says to me, "Sir, Mr. President, sir, we need your help, sir." And I'm like looking into his big black, tears falling down his soulless cheeks with his big black void of eyes. He says, "What can I do for you? Sir, we need your help. We're trying to take over the world and destroy it." Way ahead of you, boys. What do you need me for? I'm on it. All joking aside, the president or the government cannot come out and say, there are aliens that have been abducting families and children for 75 years, and we cannot stop them. They do whatever they want with these people. There appears to be a hybridization program. They're breeding you like livestock to create half monsters that can take your place and live here forever with powers to control you.
And if they answer the first question, that is the only question they've ever been asked, are UFOs real or are they alien? Once they answer the first question, that's when the follow-up questions start, like about abductions and what are their capabilities and can you stop them? Can you do anything about it? Those are the questions they don't want to have to deal with.
Yeah. Can you stop them? No.
And we cannot. What about, if it's common knowledge or accepted knowledge that aliens can control somebody's mind, let's just go small scale. Somebody commits a crime, says, whew, I was under the control of an alien being.
It would be chaos.
That's just a small part of it, but
there would be suicides on every street corner if you tell the general population that they're being taken by monsters and their kids are being bred like livestock, and we can't do a goddamn thing about it. I think rule number one of responsible government is don't tell people there's an alien invasion until you can do something about it, and we cannot. And this whole disclosure thing, it's kind of funny. All the people clamoring for disclosure, they will only accept it from the very government that has lied to them for generations, throughout their whole lives. You know that's an abusive relationship. thinking your abuser will change.
That's my point, right? So let's say the other side, let's say these others, non-human intelligences, are the ones who do the disclosure, right? They have the advantage because I know for one, I'm going to be like, well, I don't trust a fucking word my government says. And if they came out with this narrative after these NHIs came down with their own narrative, I would believe the other narrative because they can't just say, whoa, no, this is an invasion. It's too late. It's too late. Everything you say is a lie.
Yeah.
So that's like, I know there's a risk. There are risks associated with coming out with the truth. But right now there are people sleeping in their homes who are completely vulnerable, who are unable to defend themselves. And like, look, I interview tons of different people. I still don't believe
they would be no more able to defend themselves if you told them that monsters are going to kidnap you and your kids. They would be still equally vulnerable. Nothing more to protect them, but you would plant into a weak people's minds terrors that would result in maybe they grab their guns and they go looking for people who look weird. It would be the end of civilization if they said, we are being abducted as a species by beings we can't stop. And they've been at it in secrecy. If people are angry about secrecy, how about the secrecy of the aliens? They're the ones to blame in this. Turn those cannons around, boys, because they're the problem. They are the beginning of the problem and the end of the problem. And until we focus on stopping them, or if we can, which I seriously doubt.
Yeah, but we're not going to be able to if most people don't know about it, right?
What's that? Yeah, that's why
most people don't know about it.
Well,
right?
They can't know about it from a press conference with the president because that would destroy everything. They can know about it from people like us, who you're free to dismiss. And the more of us who go on shows that are so informed and informative as yours is, then more people will be exposed to, quote unquote, the actual truth of the reality of alien contact. This is your reality too, just because you haven't been grabbed or your kids.
Let's caveat that with not that I know of.
Right.
Yeah, because we didn't know. And if it weren't for this mistake by them, or the fact that they had to get me in the afternoon because I work midnights, we'd be none the wiser. So I've got to assume there's plenty of other families out there going through the same thing. As a matter of fact, I asked them one time if they take everyone. And the answer was, not everyone.
That's reassuring, right? Not everyone.
That was their exact quote.
Yeah. But they didn't give you a sense of like...
how many? No. They said, not everyone.
They don't give out information. That's their job. They know
when I asked why me, that was the last question he wanted to hear because he got a little bit angry and kind of resorted to like a whispery voice. They'll give you like a whispery horror movie voice sometimes if they want to scare you. But most of the time they talk like a regular person to me.
What did he say when you
He said, I don't know if he was trying to make me feel special or if this is the term they use or whatever. He said, you are the chosen one. And at the time I was like, what's with I didn't say anything back, but I was thinking to myself, okay, it's time to stop asking him questions. He's angry. And I was like, who are you kidding? You were just talking to me in a normal voice, and now you're talking like this. It was just a strange experience. But I knew enough to shut up after that. But I didn't think for a second that I was the only one. He just said, not everyone. So...
You're one of the chosen ones. Yeah. You're one that's been chosen.
Here's an uncomfortable question. You don't have to answer this. Do you think either of you are hybrids?
We get asked that quite a bit. If I'm a hybrid, I'm a pretty early version of one, like 1.0, who doesn't really have most of the functions it should. I'm like a bad iPhone here. I'm a talented guy, an artist, musician, and comedian and writer. But there's nothing special about me other than that. I mean, they did want to skip me ahead a couple of grades in school. My mom refused.
They did the same thing with me. They wanted to go skip ahead. I didn't know that.
High IQ?
Yes. Yeah. Actually, IQ test didn't come in until I was in like 6th or 7th grade. But I'm old. But I don't feel... I mean, at the very most, this is what... I'm not a hybrid, but they had taken Mom before we were born. It's very possible they are able to just tweak a little gene that is very useful for them that Mom had. Yeah. And they could maybe bring it out more and make sure it comes into us. I can imagine that, but...
Well, if you're both amenable to doing another episode on hybridization, I know we're pretty long in the tooth, but is that something you'd be interested in doing?
We absolutely would, because it's extremely important. And there's one more area where we lose people. So, we're outliers. We are. People don't like the confidence with which we speak, but that's just the way our memories we fought them back. We broke that. So our memories are fairly intact. And some people think we should be, if we were really taken, we'd be more terrified or more unsure, but we're not. I'm not saying
they made us, at least with me, and I think with him, most of the time made us feel comfortable. And they were, I hate to use the word nice, but at least verbally nice to you.
We would like to talk about the nature of the aliens in a way that's not really heard, but you're talking 1,000 hours in their presence with us.
Yeah. So why don't we end the episode here, and then we'll talk about that, because I'm keen on learning more information about that. So thank you both. This has been super illuminating, even on areas that we don't agree on, like the disclosure stuff.
Sorry.
I thought that was...
Sorry.
There's no need to apologize. Like, that discussion has to be had, and it should continue to be had. But we both agree that some level of disclosure... I think the only disagreement we had there is, I think the government needs to step up. But I think we both agree that disclosure needs to happen. We just need to do it ourselves.
Yes,
and I think the government has jumped the shark at this point. I don't think anything they say is credible. So this is how it's going to happen, through conversations like this. So I think we're 100% on board with that.
Great. We agree with you. It's grassroots. It's the people bringing the truth. And yes, we agree. And we're looking forward to the next episode.
All right, gentlemen, we will talk soon. Thank you.
Absolutely.
If you enjoyed today's video, please hit like and subscribe, and also hit the notification button so you can be notified whenever I post new content. Thank you. Now, if you're enjoying the channel and you want to support it, there are several things you can do. In fact, there are 5 things you can do. The first thing you can do is just buy my books. I got plenty of books out in the market right now, and I would prefer that folks buy a book rather than giving me direct support, because they get something out of it. They have a real tangible product. The second way you can support me is by becoming a member on YouTube or becoming a patron on Patreon. And just go to either site and it'll explain everything. The third way you can support the channel is by checking out my merch site, which is here. There's plenty of stuff that you can get to support the channel. And I'd appreciate that you have it and you can wear it. Not only do you help support the channel, but you also help promote the channel, and I appreciate that. The fourth way that you can support the channel, and this is really easy, is anytime you want to buy something on Amazon, literally just go to the description below and click on any link, literally any link. The channel gets a cut of that, and it costs you no extra money. You just go through the link, as I'm part of the Amazon Affiliates Club. The fifth and final way you can support the channel is through donations. Now, I don't prefer these because it's more of a
expression of gratitude, but you don't really get anything out of it as a subscriber to the channel. However, if you decide to do these options, there's two options. There's Buy Me a Coffee, which is a separate site. And there's also, you can go through YouTube with either a super chat, super sticker, or a super thanks. Again, I prefer Buy Me a Coffee because that organization takes less money than Amazon does. But either way, I appreciate any support you are willing to give the channel. So thank you very much and keep watching. I really appreciate it.